In this video, I'm going to talk about when things became clearly unconstitutional, and that was when in 2004 the state redefined my father as a moderate violent risk. Well, so this started with my father contacting the state level sex offender registry as he was supposed to, and letting them know that he was moving and that he was beginning the legal request to be relieved of having to register as a sex offender. Well, so the state law said that a registered sex offender who was a low risk and had been released with no reoffenses for 10 years or more would be relieved of having to register as a sex offender. And at this time, my father had not reoffended since his release 15 years earlier. He had been considered a nonviolent low risk for those entire 15 years, and he had proof of being awarded a certificate of rehabilitation 7 years earlier. He should have been the perfect example of the type of person who would be relieved of having to register as a sex offender. When the state sex offender registry finally replied to my father, it was in the form of telling him that he was to be reassessed for his risk level and that the sex offender registry was recommending for him to be assessed at the highest level risk with special enhancing labels of violent offender, child sexual predator, who was to be publicly identified. I mean, what? Where was this even coming from? So when it comes to the risk assessment hearing, I really think that this is when things start to cross the line. So you'll have the DA versus the defense, and then what the judge thinks based on what they're saying. And so you'll have the DA come up with something like he is a predator, and the defense saying, well, no, there's no proof to that. The original investigator thought that, but found nothing to back that claim up, and so he dropped it, and there is no proof to show that fact. And so it should be disregarded, and the judge will say it will be considered for the risk evaluation. And so he's actually considering the fact that my father is a predator, even though there is nothing to back it up. And then they'll say things like, he is violent, and the defense will say, well, no, I mean, there was the use of force charge, but really it was just the fact that he's an adult and the kid was a kid, and so anything an adult says is forcing the kid to do it because the kid is intimidated, even though there was no evidence really showing that the kid was ever upset or hurt or anything like that. He was always happy coming back, and the judge says, well, he'll be declared violent. And, I mean, one of the most insane things that they did was saying the fact that my father does not accept responsibility, that he holds strong on his claim that he is innocent, that he was falsely accused, and that he did not commit the crime. And they use that to say that, yes, the fact that he is stating that he is innocent makes him a higher risk. And that is just like, that part blows my mind. I cannot believe that they could do something like that. And so pretty much, I mean, it was just a long string of these claims and then of the judge just accepting them, and I don't know, it just sort of blows my mind. But then what really sort of makes me upset even in all of this is that, so then when the defense would come up with something that would show that my father is a low risk, that my father is not dangerous, he is not violent, he does not show pedophilic tendencies, that would be given no merit whatsoever. It would be pretty much thrown out of the window because they would not listen to it. And so take, for example, the psychiatric evaluation that was for the certificate of rehabilitation. The psychologist in it said that he shows no pedophilic tendencies whatsoever, and the judge declared that to have no merit. He even declared the certificate of rehabilitation itself that is supposed to show that he is a low risk to have no merit. And one thing that I also find sort of ridiculous is that, so they considered the fact that he has been offense-free for 15 years to have no merit because they thought it should only count when he has moved into the state, when isn't it supposed to be offense-free since release? I mean, it confuses me. I don't understand the logic. And they also took their own state statistics that my father was bringing up as evidence of, well, look, it shows that after being free for 15 years after release with no reoffenses, that the chance of his reoffending is less than 1%, and they said that has no merit whatsoever as well. And so, and this entire thing is just a long string of who even knows what? It doesn't make sense. I don't see a sense of right or wrong, because all I see here is that they're throwing everything that shows that my dad is a low risk, that shows pretty much what they don't want to hear. They're throwing it out because they're not going to listen to it, they're not going to consider it, and they're taking what the DA says, even if there is no proof, even if there is nothing pushing that or showing that, and they're actually using it to consider, and they're using ridiculous things like my father says he's innocent to make him a higher risk, and that, I find that ridiculous. I mean, how is this possible? How is this supposed to be allowed? The final judgment of the risk assessment in 2004 was that my father was to be declared as a moderate violent offender who is to be publicly identified for an offense against an 8-year-old child. And when they published this information, they left out any dates whatsoever. There were no dates. And so as far as anyone reading it would see, they would say that he is a moderate risk for doing it again, that he violently sexually raped an 8-year-old child, and what are they supposed to get out of that? And all it is such a lie. I mean, all it is a huge load of crap, but nobody else knows that. All they see is this, is that it's like probably about a 50-50% chance that he'll do it again, and that he violently raped an 8-year-old child. That's what the public knew. And the government, they were fully aware of the real statistics. They were fully aware that my dad posed no real threat, and they deliberately chose to falsely raise his risk and identify him as something that he wasn't. And I think that this is clearly when the government began moving into violating my father's constitutional rights, and along the way violating my mother's and violating mine. And what they were doing, I think, is just, it started to become increasingly insane and out of control. And it's still happening. It's happening everywhere. It's happening to God knows how many people have similar stories where it's just their risk assessment is completely falsified, and then they get judged and harassed over it. And I mean, that's just the point of me telling this story. So I hope you enjoyed this video.